following interview, I sit down with Michael King. Michael King is the founder and CEO of King Recruiting. It's really an inspiring conversation about both resilience and reinvention. And we talk through Michael's battle with epilepsy and the dark places that took him, and then ultimately popping out on the other side and reinventing himself from a bartender to a very successful executive recruiter across technology. He's also an author, Be There When I Return. It is a beautiful memoir about his journey that I highly recommend. Before we get to the episode, as always, this episode is brought to you by our partners at Optimizing.ai. I actually just recently joined them as an advisor. I believe in the mission. I believe in the team that much that I've decided to give them a hand any way I can. And they're doing some really cool things. If you've heard me talk about them, kind of like Whoop without the wearables, but it allows you to put this emotional intelligence, this human layer into digital experiences as well as products, tracking vital signs, stress levels, how tired someone is, so you can actually build products that people enjoy using, that don't stress them out or give them more anxiety. And it's early days, but they are looking for a handful of beta customers. So check them out in the show notes below. And of course, our second partner is Dream Fuel. Dream Fuel is a mental performance coaching platform. And I can tell you, it had a huge impact on both my personal and professional life when I was coached by their team. They coach against 52 different exercises, all backed in the latest neuroscience. And it's really for anyone that's looking to build up their career. Maybe you feel stuck, you feel plateaued. Their team is incredible. And they are offering all listeners of the Wake Up Call a free one-to-one coaching session. They do guided visualizations, guided breath works, all these really cool things that you can start to build into your daily life. So take them up on it. Both will be in the show notes below. But now, on to my episode with Michael. Michael King, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thank you for having me, sir. How are your travels?
Oh man, they've been beautiful, somewhat challenging, we'll say. We've had to actually reschedule this podcast a handful of times now because I did get the dreaded travelers, we'll call it stomach issues, which par for the course, in some of these remote areas. But feeling
Not
good
surprised.
today. Yeah. In Bangkok right now. Nice to have some good Wi-Fi so we can get this done without interruptions. But man, I've been super excited for this conversation. It is long overdue, and I feel like I already kind of know you pretty well because I've been lucky enough to listen to your audiobook. It's kind of been my companion over the last little while. There's a lot of downtime when you're traveling, going from point A to point B. And it's such an incredible, I've been listening to it, it's incredible read or listen. And it's all about your story, which we'll get into. And, it's called Be There When I Return. I highly recommend any of our listeners checking it out if some of the stuff that we talk about in this conversation today resonates. But man, let's just start at the beginning. Who is Michael King?
Oh, born and raised San Francisco Bay Area. Went to high school, college in the Bay Area. After college, wasn't sure kind of what I wanted to do. I was dabbling into doing commercials, and I got a job at the Hard Rock Cafe in San Francisco and opened that up, which was very fun, very fun. And then I transferred to L.A. when I was 26 and worked at the Hard Rock in L.A. until 92. So I had That'll probably be another book. People have asked about the hard rock stories, and I'm like, well, I really don't have that many in the book, though that might be another book.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. We have a few parallels in common early in our lives. So I was kind of a pseudo child actor, did a bunch of commercials up here and where I'm from in Vancouver. Is actually a pretty big kind of film industry up there as well, and did that for many years. And then I was also a bartender in my early 20s and server around. And you know, I'm sure you feel a similar way, but I think everyone should have to work a job in the service industry, and not only to like sort of increase your human empathy for what it's like to be in a service job like that, because it is, some of those is the hardest I've ever worked. I've also briefly worked in the kitchen side, which also shout out to people working in kitchens. Like that's an insanely demanding job. Um, and I couldn't imagine like the hard rock and the amount of stress with like ticket after ticket after ticket after ticket, just like probably never stop. Right?
No,
Did you have a moment,
no.
maybe midday, but
Very,
like during
very,
rush?
very rare. It was uh, 2, 3 deep every night. Now,
Hmm.
San Francisco, of course, when it was open, it was that way. Then when I moved to LA, in the mid '80s, the whole mid '80s, late '80s, it was the spot. I mean, there's lines
Hmm.
around the corner, 3, 4 deep at the bar. Yeah, from the time you got back there, it was go, go, go. And yeah, you tried to come up for air a few times, but it was very busy. But,
Yeah.
you gotta act quick on your feet. It was great for, math skills. It wasn't
Mm.
like it is nowadays, you ring it in and it tells you. It's like, people would say, 5 Coronas, 4 shots of tequila, 2 kamikazes, and you gotta ring it up quickly in your head and tell them right there how much it is, and then give them change quickly and move on.
Yeah. Yeah. But far before everyone's tapping their cards and things, and it's all like,
Yeah.
POS systems.
Right. Yeah, they just ring it in and it tells them how much, and they go back to the customer and tells them instead of trying to add it up in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you kind of you have this kind of really cool life as this bartender in, probably the most iconic bar at that time in LA. You can
Right.
listen, I think it's like in rap songs and mentioned in all these different like Hollywood movies they've shot there. And the Hard Rock in LA was very much the spot.
Right.
Um, and then, in your journey and your story, this is the kind of the wake up call, and you had a big one, a really, really big one at a little bit later in life, and
Right.
would love to just kind of talk through how that comes to be, and ultimately the impact of that.
Yeah, I was 31 years old, like you said, just living life. I had my roommate, 2 other buddies over to watch the NCAA men's basketball championship. And it was the second half, and it went to a commercial. And then all of a sudden, I kind of was looking around, and for a minute, I wasn't sure where I was and who these people were in my apartment.
Oh.
And then finally, one of my buddies was like, "Why'd you do that?" I'm like, "What? Why'd you do that?" I'm like, "What the F are you guys talking about?" I had no clue what they were talking about. Then we just kind of blew it off. Then at that same time, I just started dating this woman who, of course, I met at the Hard Rock. And we were down in Newport Beach on the pier, and out of nowhere, she says, "Why'd you do that?" And I'm like, "What?" And I have no clue what she's talking about. So this went on for a few more weeks. And then my girlfriend I was dating and my roommate did a little intervention. And they told me that out of nowhere, I started, clapping my hands and making weird noises. And of course, the first thing is denial. You're like, what? No, I didn't do that. I mean, nowadays they just hold up a phone and go, they videotape you and go, look what you're doing, dude.
Mhm.
And then, but I was in denial that nope, nope, nope. End up, I went to a neurologist, did all the testing, and then he said, I believe you have a form of epilepsy. Now, at the time, only thing I knew about epilepsy was what I'd seen on TV or movies is, someone falling on the ground and shaking. And I remember looking at my girlfriend just thinking, did he not hear what you described? I thought I had like Tourette's or something. But
Mhm.
it was just an introduction to epilepsy in that there's many, many forms of them, and I had a form, it was called complex partial seizures, where I would kinda stare off or make movements, and it would last 5, 10, 15 seconds, but I would have once I got into the years, I would have 3 a day, 4 a day, 5 a day, 6 a day, and if someone wasn't with me, I would have no idea because I wouldn't know.
Mhm. What was that feeling like when the first stage is denial, and then when, you get that the doctor that's telling you, no, hey, this is what you have. What was that like? How did you navigate those first weeks, months?
Um, Reading up on it, he gave me a bunch of pamphlets, and I got more information just reading up, and the tough thing is, the first line of defense is medication. So he's, boom, here, take these pills. And then it was just always trying to be aware of if something was happening, or it was really odd because before having seizures, I used to go out with my buddies and we'd go on Melrose or go out anywhere. And, girls would recognize me and my buddy was a manager and, oh, you guys are from the Hard Rock. And it was fun. People would look at you and
Mhm.
recognize you. When I started having seizures and I'd go out and then I'd look at people staring at me, I would think, oh shit, did I just do that? So a lot of
Right.
times as the years went on, I didn't want to leave because if I wasn't with somebody, I was just afraid to go out because I wouldn't know what would happen. And
Mm.
again, have people staring at me and not knowing what happened.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that must be such a terrifying feeling of just like almost like not trusting your own body and what you're gonna do.
Right. You have no control. I mean, the medication, that was the frustrating part is the medication wasn't working. So
Right.
I mean, it's the oldest joke in the book, but with doctors, I mean, that's why they call it a practice is,
Mhm.
with the brain, they don't know. And so it started off, take take one pill in the morning, one in the evening, and it's like, okay, you're still having them. Let's try two now. Then let's try this medication and this. I just felt like a guinea pig because nothing was working, and they just kept trying different things.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so, you talked about it's hurting your confidence. You don't want to always just go out into the world. You're
Right.
starting to get this like fear. Um, was it debilitating to the fact that it affected your jobs, your work? Obviously, being a bartender is a very physical job. You're interacting with people all the
Yeah.
time. Walk me through some of the impact
Well,
on
yeah,
your
so
life.
I had left the Hard Rock and I was working at some other places, and when I would go interview, that was the problem is, do I tell them or not? And a couple people, when I joined, I didn't say anything, but then they came up with excuses on why they had to let me go.
Um,
And then I knew it, well, if I tell them, I'm not gonna get hired. So,
mhm,
I went through a bunch of jobs and I was lucky I found one. I didn't say anything. And then one day I just decided, I got to tell the owners. And so I sat down, told the owners, told the other bartenders. And it was risky because it could have ended up with getting fired, because again, they don't know. So they're thinking, they were like, well, what happens if you grab a bottle and hit somebody? I'm like, I don't do that. Okay. What happens if, no, I
mhm,
don't do that. So it was very, educating them into exactly. what I do, and very compassionate. And I had a nice run at this one nightclub in LA.
Hmm. On the education piece, I think it's super important because I know my eyes were opened right at the beginning of your book. You go through a couple of stats of how common epilepsy is, and I know, I can think two people right off the top of my head. One is the my best friend I'm traveling with. His father is has epilepsy, and then another really good friend back home. His sister has it, and it's massively impacted their life. But I think you mentioned it's affects 1 in 26
26,
adults
exactly.
in the U.S. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, I
That's
know
and
people. Yeah,
probably many undiagnosed, right? Who
most
just similar to
exactly,
you, who just
exactly.
don't know what's going on.
Or misdiagnosed, something else.
Right.
I've heard, since the book came out, I've had conversations with many people that are dealing with epilepsy, and the stories are just crazy from, oh no, you don't have it, and then they do. And
Hmm.
I met a young lawyer in San Francisco when I did the epilepsy walk in San Francisco, and she's just finishing up law school. And I asked her the $1 million question. I'm like, so when you start interviewing, are you going to tell them? She goes, no, I can't. I'm afraid to. So it's really sad because there's really not a lot of funding. The thing I wish there was is some celebrity or some well-known person would come forward and be the Michael J. Fox, be the Christopher Reeves to lead this
Hmm.
charge. But it's so misunderstood that there's so many people that don't want to be that person, which is sad.
Hmm. Hmm. Super sad. Yeah. Yeah. There's some of these. Yeah. It's great that we have advocates in a lot of pockets of the world, but there's still a lot that are almost sort of taboo, and people don't raise their hand. They're worried about the
Right.
repercussion. Um, but I think conversations like this are super important. And then, so shifting gears a little bit, um, part of what we try and discuss on this podcast is, tough things happen. They come in various forms. It can be chronic illness, it can be severe burnout, it can be addiction, it can be divorce, it can be all these things, but something beautiful, looking back, and it's not beautiful as you're going through it, but a lot of times it can be a catalyst for sort of a whole new life.
Right.
You realize very quickly that you're not immortal. You're going to die one day, and you kind of get this new set of eyes. You're blessed with, like, just sort of, once you get out of the pit of kind of despair, you kind of have these new eyes, and you're
Right.
like, okay, well, if this is it, then I'm going to build a life that I'm really proud to live. And you have certainly done that. And if you can kind of talk through coming out of that, dealing with epilepsy, finding ways and not cures, but solutions for it, and then ultimately going on a big self transformation journey.
Yeah. Well, the most important person was the girlfriend who is now my wife. And that's the part of the book I was hoping people would really gravitate to, was the love story. And people have said it's one of the best love stories that they've read,
It is
because
beautiful.
when I met her, she was married in a very abusive relationship. And she'll tell people, if it wasn't for us seeing each other at the Hard Rock that night and then eventually meeting, a few months later, she doesn't know if she'd be around because it was very abusive. And then when I met her, I started having this, went down the seizures and the epilepsy, and she never left, which, I was surprised. She was 31 years old, gorgeous, living in LA, and I didn't think I was the greatest catch in the world. But she didn't give up. And I don't think I would have been able to get through it if I was just by myself. And so then when I was 37, I had a meeting with my doctor and we discussed possible surgery because the medication wasn't working. And, I went down some dark holes of, do I really want to live this way? And talked to the doctor. We went to UCLA, went through all the testing, and I was a candidate. But the most successful surgery is when they can go in and remove a section that is misfiring, almost like a tumor, things like that. But mine was in multiple parts of my brain, so they couldn't do that. So what they wanted to do was this surgery is called MST, where they put these little slits into the sections that are misfiring. And then the hope was that it would lessen the seizures. So, and that's where also the title comes from. So the title Be There When I Return comes from a couple things. One is she was always there when I returned from a seizure to make sure I was okay. And then before I went in for the surgery, my parents were there and she was there. And I didn't want to hear any side effects or worst case. I was like, let's just do this. This is my only hope. But
Mhm.
she asked, and my parents asked, no, worst case scenarios, bleeding on the brain. And they said short-term memory loss possible. And when I came out of surgery and out of ICU, I started to slowly come out of it. And I saw her up there and I saw my parents and I reached up and kissed her hand and saw my parents and waved and went back to sleep. And then they told me the next day that my mom and my girlfriend were worried that I would not remember them when I came out of it. So it's be
Yeah.
there when I return. So very blessed. 2 months later, the seizures completely stopped and the doctors were shocked. This is the first time the surgery was performed at UCLA. And so, uh, after surgery and my girlfriend and I, we wanted a child. We wanted babies. And the doctor said, that's fine. But we were thinking, you know, we're 37 years old. What are the chances getting pregnant right away? And she got pregnant right away. But again, I'm bartending at night and she was working at the Cheesecake Factory in Redondo Beach at night. How do you have a child with two people working at night? So, I have my college degree. My dad said, get it. You don't know. You may use it. You may not, but at least you have it. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I said, I'll go find a day job. I looked at some sales job. I just didn't know because I'd only been a bartender forever. And then one day I ran into an old bartending buddy who I worked with at the Hard Rock at the golf course. And he told me he was a recruiter. And I knew nothing about this. And I was like, for the Army? For the Navy? What do you mean a recruiter? He goes, no, no, no. He goes, the two guys that are paying, they find the clients and me and another guy find the candidates. It was just the four of them in Santa Monica. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, do you make any money doing this? And he said, I'm going to make $100,000 this year. After all the medical bills, we were like $50,000-$60,000 in debt. And I was like, I need to make some money. And they didn't have it was a small little office. And he's like, the owner's like, give me a couple months, let's see what happens. And then he called me up and said, do you want to give it a shot? And it was 100% commission, no benefits, nothing. And my girlfriend's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know. It sounds fun. And so in the end of 98, I jumped into the wild world of recruiting. And
Nice.
so that second half of the book takes you on that journey and then moving to Seattle. Because the place, if anybody remembers the history of the internet, that in 2000 and 2001, it came crashing down. So the
Mhm.
place shut down. And then in the end of '01, we packed up from LA and we moved to Seattle, and I found a job at a place called the Triad Group. And the first time I had ever worked at a place where I had to do a full desk, meaning I had to find the clients and the candidates. I had never done this. Of course, I fabricated a bit to the owner. And when I interviewed, I said, of course I did. Of course but, it was pretty scary just never doing this. And it wasn't an easy journey, which I think has made me the person I am, because I didn't do a deal for the whole 2002, for the whole year, not one deal. And we were living off my wife's hourly pay at the Cheesecake Factory, like $15 an hour.
Wow.
And,
With a
many
young
people,
child now at this point,
I
correct?
know, yeah.
Yeah.
And just living off credit cards and just thinking, maybe I should try something else, maybe not, I don't know. But I just had this feeling that I could do this. And I remember going in December, for the end of the year review, and I'm the only guy in the company that hadn't placed anybody. And that morning I told my wife, I'm like, I'm done. I'm fine. I mean, I wouldn't keep me. I mean, I haven't done anything. And I had my meeting with the owner, and he's like, I think you're going to be good at this. I'm like, really? And he goes, my office was next to his. I've heard you on the phone. He says, you just need a little luck. Because I had a couple things that I thought were going to close, but they didn't, And so I was like, okay. And then January came around, and towards mid-January, I had somebody interviewing, and they got hired. And then a couple months later, just everything started to fall in place. And then in July, I ended up placing, I think it was 6 or 7 people in the month and 3 in one day.
Wow.
It was
3 in one day, baby.
it was
That's
it was
that's
it
good.
was it was crazy. So the opportunity was for the Silicon Valley people. It was that company called Callidus
Mm,
Software.
yeah.
So in '03, they were pretty hot. So I placed the SVP of marketing in like April-ish, May. And then the head of HR said, is that all you do is place executives? I'm like, no, what do you need? And she started rattling off all these roles. And boom, I just jumped on it. And I haven't looked back since.
Mhm. So inspiring on, a lot of levels, battling epilepsy for, those 6 years. And, we didn't go into the how dark it really got, but I know it got really, really dark for you, to the point of,
Right.
not wanting to exist at times.
Well,
And
then also, going head on, having a seizure while driving and going head on into the trees and waking up in
yeah.
the ambulance. I mean, I shouldn't, in the book, there's pictures of the car. And when people see that, they're like, you were inside that? I'm like, yep. And it was good. The doctor said it was good that I had a seizure, because when you think about it, anybody, if you lose control of a car and you're going into you tense up. You slam
Right.
on the brakes and you tense up. He says, your arms would have been shattered, your legs would have been shattered, but I was having a seizure. So I call it like, Jello Man or something. I was just like this. So I'm just all over the place, and I wasn't tense. And then again, I woke up inside the ambulance and had no clue how badly the accident. I knew nothing, because I had like scratches from the seat belt, because I had a tank top on, and I had a big knot on my head, which I didn't know where that came from. Um, but I remember telling one of the ambulance guys, I'm like, hey, I got to get to work. And he's like, you're not driving that car anytime soon. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But when I got released and I went to go see that, it was just totally mangled. And if you can imagine, the dashboard and steering wheel were almost through the windshield. And I was
Wow.
looking at it just going, wow, I was in that. But then you start thinking, because there was a sidewalk that I went over, then, on the way
Mm,
back home, I just started thinking, it's like, wow. I mean, I could have taken out a mom with her kids.
mm,
and you just think like how my life could have just, yes, if I would have been killed, would have been one thing, but I could have taken out a whole family, and I was, it just so many levels. It was just very, very emotional.
Imagine. Yeah. Was there any moments of sort of deep clarity after the accident where it's a near death experience? You're having these thoughts, oh my God, I could have ran someone over. Um, what was going through your mind when that all kind of really hits home?
Well, then you start thinking that, maybe I should have had never been driving in the first place.
Mm,
Because in the book, I have another seizure while driving. I don't crash, but it's a pretty crazy moment with my girlfriend. But I mean, again, I was living in LA. I couldn't comprehend not having a car. How would I get around? I'd have to ask my girlfriend to drive me everywhere, take buses. And there was still that little part of me that it's going to go away. It's going to go away. It'll be okay. But I didn't want to give up. That was like the last thing is my car. If I would have given that up, it would have been like, that's it. You know, now I got to rely on people even more to do all these
right.
things for me. So it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was a moment. But then after that, I went down some, and you read the first chapter. So I went down some dark holes of, do I even want to be around? Do I want to live like this? Is this really how I want to live? And then I just decided, I got to fight this and don't give up.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I'm very happy that you fought through it, man, and you live the beautiful life that you live now and get to inspire others. And you
Very
know,
blessed. Very blessed. I just
yeah,
have this, I
yeah.
see, I got to, I mentioned at the end of the book, I still have this weird feeling that one day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be on a beach in Santa Monica with my girlfriend, and it's going to be, 1997, 2 weeks or so before I go in for surgery. That this whole thing has been a dream, because if someone would have told me, in LA, they'd go, hey, come here, I want to tell you something. I know this is just off the wall, but you're going to get into this recruiting industry. You're going to do this. You're going to make this type of money. You're going to
Mhm.
live this and travel this. And I would go, wow, if that ever could happen, that would be amazing. I never saw this life coming. You
Mhm.
hope, you know, my hope was writing scripts and doing things that something would happen. But, and that's what I tell people. I graduate college. I'm like, don't worry if you don't know what you want to do. I said, you're just getting started. Is,
Mhm.
you may think you want to do something, but, don't go in with blinders and that's all you want to do, because you're going to meet people. People are going to come into your life. Opportunities are going to come up, and you need to really be open to them, because I just believe we end up where we're supposed to end up. And it may
Mhm.
be a long, windy road like mine. And there's people who I've been blessed to work with in tech that, have just had skyrocket careers, out of college, great job, another great job, takes off, a company goes public. And, on the outside, it seems like it's been perfect. But I know these people and they've gone through some tough times, but they don't openly share it. So on the outside, we think, wow, they've had a blessed life. And that's on without this book, I'm sure people thought that of me because I never said anything.
Mhm.
If you just look at my LinkedIn and like, wow, he went to a great high school, great college, wow, great career. And it's like, nope. And there's plenty of people out there if they decide to open up. And if it wasn't for my wife in 2020 telling me that you need to tell this story. You need to share it. There's people you can help. I would have taken this to my grave. Nobody would have known. And when I posted it, the covers and what I was gonna be doing last year, I got so many people reach out and said, "Wow, I didn't know this." And I was like, "Well, how would you?" I'm not gonna introduce
No.
myself when I used to have epilepsy. It's like so part of me, I'm glad that she pushed me to do this because since the book has come out, it's been very emotional of, people telling me how I've changed their lives, and thank you for writing the book. And I'm very blessed, very blessed.
I think it's so important to show all sides of success or building a good life because as you said, like on the outside it always looks up and to the right. You know, everyone looks like they just got increasingly more happy, increasingly more money, and it looks a
Yeah,
lot more like this in everyone's journey. And you know, the adversity people battle through is always incredibly inspiring.
right.
I I do want to spend kind of a good chunk of this conversation on this transition when you're 37. You know, I think a lot of people when they're 37, they're like, well, I picked my career. I'm on a path, and you know, maybe one day I'm a senior manager now or a director now. Maybe in 6 years I'll become a VP. But I actually kind of like hate what I'm doing, or maybe I'm in the trades and I couldn't
Yeah,
imagine going into tech. Or you know, you can fall prey to this mindset of, all right, well, I picked my path and now I have to live with that path.
right.
And I kind of viscerally feel right now that a lot of people are struggling with that. I think there's a lot of different factors at play, AI being a big one,
Yep,
where a lot of people are getting laid off, a lot of people are getting replaced with maybe a different generation that is more native to this AI kind of revolution. There's just a lot of fear. It feels like the ground is shaking a little bit, and these
yep,
traditional paths are breaking down. And you know, people are probably revisiting. Do I love what I do? Does this actually excite me? Is there a way that I could make money writing, or all these different things that um, you can do at any point in your
yeah,
life, you know, as
yeah,
you're proven. Like just so the listeners know, you now run your own, you know,
yeah.
recruiting firm, very successful, work with all these incredible companies. And you started at 37, which on a lot of people's mind would be like,
Well,
you know,
so that's when I first
yeah.
got into the recruiting business. So I went out on my own in 2017.
Uh-huh.
So when I moved to Seattle in '01, it was working for another company. And finally, 2017, I went out on my own at 57. So very
Wow.
old.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but this whole year, a lot of people have reached out just to talk about that. Is like, wow,
Yeah.
how did you, when you were 37, decide to try this, or 41 to just pack up and move to Seattle and try this new career? Part of the answer is I didn't have a choice. I had to make this work. It's like, here's
Uh-huh.
my shot. Okay. I wasn't given many shots. And this was because in '01, there wasn't a lot of hiring going on. Same thing in the recruiting industry. The market still was down. And this opportunity came up to move and we just did it. And I had to make it work. And it's the thing. I was always the first guy in, the last guy out, and just worked my ass off because I was later in life and I had to make some money just to pay off all the debt and try to save some money, try to buy a house. And it was almost, if you want to say, your back's against the wall and you got to make it work. And
Uh-huh.
I've had conversations with people that are starting to feel that because, yes, they've got laid off or they've been interviewing for 6, 7 months and nothing.
Uh-huh.
And they just start thinking is, what happens if I don't get a job at the end of the year? I'm going to start 2026 still interviewing and I know people that have just got out of it and found other things that they've enjoyed, and they went that route. So, yeah, I think when we look back, this year is going to be known for that, of a lot of people reevaluating uh, their careers. And I think the pandemic did that too. A lot of people, when they went back to work and they were working at home, and now they
Mhm.
spend all this time with their kids. And then they start thinking, it's like, wow, for those last 7 years, I would come home and they'd either be asleep or they would be going to sleep within an hour. And the only time I saw them was on weekends. And there's people I know that don't want to go back into an office. They just want to work remote, 100% remote, so they can have more family time, because they're starting to really think, what's important. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, this whole year, it's just a strange one, which I saw it coming, with the AI. And 2021, I don't know if that helped, because it was that was by far the craziest year ever, with the amount of hiring, the money the companies were just throwing to people, the
The old war for
titles.
talent. That was crazy. That was a crazy time.
Yeah. And then the titles, they were just throwing titles. You want a VP? Sure, we'll give you a VP title. And so now when people got laid off, they're saying, "Oh, I want to be a VP of demand gen, and I want my base, 232." I said, "What? That ain't happening. You're a VP with no direct reports.
Yeah.
They gave you a VP title. You're not a VP." And it's just
Yeah.
so, I think it just set some people off, and some companies were like, what were we thinking? Grow at all costs, just scale, scale, scale. And I had companies that got, 200 million in 1 year, and they were just hiring. And I'm like, talking to the CMO, I'm like, the revenue doesn't support this. Oh, that'll come. And I'm like, okay. And it didn't. And they had to lay off almost
Mhm.
everybody.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I think it's only unfortunately going to get stranger and stranger over the next couple of years.
Yeah. And I try, you try to be positive, and I've seen, different panels, and there's people trying to be positive, and
Mhm.
they say, "Oh, it's not going to replace humans." It's like, okay, it's not going to replace all humans, but if I'm the
Mhm.
CMO and I had a marketing team of 20, 25 people, it's going to replace over half the team. So
Yeah.
it's going to replace humans.
Yeah.
I think we just have to realize that it is, and yes, we're going to need people. We just won't need as many people, in a
Yeah.
sales org or a marketing team or engineering or any of the teams. You're just not going to need
Yeah.
as many people. And so when
Yeah.
you start multiplying that across the millions of jobs, it's like, wow, you know, you're going to have all these people fighting for a couple roles, and then you have all the kids coming out of college, and the old days of, I want to get into sales. There's SDR jobs all over the place years ago. Every company would hire tons of SDRs. It would be sink or swim. Whoever was good, they'd keep, and the other ones they would. But, now what are they going to hire? Two?
Maybe.
And they're
Yeah.
probably going to be hiring people that have experience, and so
Mhm.
I know it's going to be interesting to watch. I wish I could just jump in a little time capsule, and come back
Me
5
too.
years from now, and
Me
just
too.
go and come out and go, wow, it's not as bad as I thought. Or
Yeah.
going, oh
Or jump right
shit.
back in that time capsule.
I know, or go, oh shit, look at all these robots everywhere, and what's going on, and oh my God. So I try to,
I'm
stay
Yeah,
positive.
you got to stay positive. And I think there will always be new opportunities created. But I think it's very in line with this conversation. Like the way you thought things were going to go in your career is no longer how they're going to
No,
go.
no.
Your role is going to look different. You are going to have to rebuild, more or less from the studs, and what that requires, which, you know, is so important, that can be hard when you get to like an executive level or this certain point of your career where you have to go back to a beginner's mindset and you have to be very humble. Your ego is out the window. and you have to be like, okay, I'm going to take two, maybe three steps backwards in order to ultimately set myself up for staying relevant in this new,
Right.
world. And obviously you showed that by your you bartended for 20 plus years. You're probably damn good at what you do. You know how to do everything. You maximize the tips, make the best old fashioned going, like all of these things. And then you have to get thrust into and probably make pretty damn good money with tips and everything. And then
Yeah.
thrust into an environment where, that first year you're not making any money. You probably feel like an idiot again and again. You're learning all this new technology. Like there's almost a lot of these similarities between everyone has
Yeah.
to learn AI tools now, like at this rapid pace. Well, you had to learn all of this software.
Yeah.
Like imagine
Yeah.
you never interacted with like a CRM or all of these, like any email tools or anything like that.
No.
And it's like a completely different language.
Yeah.
And I bet there was 18 months to 2 years where you're just like, I have no idea what's
So,
going on. And you have to be comfortable with that.
right. And that's, like you said, the bartending thing. You got to, be quick on your feet, think quick.
Mhm.
And you just, again, I had to just make it work. It's funny you say, about a step back because I know a lot of people that have had VP marketing roles and they came up through product marketing or demand gen and they have told me that, hey, I'd be okay taking a lesser role at a bigger company
Mhm.
because they're just really looking at the market and going, I can't just sit here and say, okay, I'm just going to hold out for a CMO role, at a series B, C that's well funded and revenues this and the team because, there's not a lot of those. And there gets to a point when you have to say, I need a job. And that's one of my first questions to people is when I start talking to them and they're interviewing at companies, I'm like, do you need a job? And they're like,
Mhm.
yes, I've been out for like 8 months. And I'm like, okay, you got to do what you got to do. And
Mhm.
if it means the salary's good and it's maybe a step below, go do it. If you kill it there, you can get promoted, move up. And when things do get better, then you can make that jump. But that's always the tough choice of,
Mhm.
do I take a step back? And some have, and I know there's some that told me they won't.
Mhm. It'd be tough sledding for those folks, I think, over the next little bit.
I
Uh,
I
mm.
know. I know.
What would your advice be then? It could be any big career switch, not necessarily just in tech, the worlds we live in now, but let's say I'm late 30s, I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking it's now or never. I've always had this thought of my life's going to look like this. I'm going to feel this way, and it's not right now. And I'm just really scared to take those kind of first
Well,
steps. If you
yeah,
could talk to those people,
well,
what would you say?
it's scary. It's not easy. I would really start thinking of other things that I liked to do, other industries, and just kind of being open to talking to different people, friends that are outside of tech. If, hopefully you have some friends outside of tech. A lot of us, you stay in that bubble and that's all you know. But, if you
Mhm.
know people that are doing other things and, everybody has hobbies and things that they're good at that you start thinking is, can I turn that into a business? Maybe, we're talking about AI long term, but maybe this is just short term, that jobs might start picking up. But
Mhm.
just, again, just being open to things that come your way that you maybe never even thought of. But also having that thought that you still, if you're in you're 35, 37, you still have plenty of time. I mean, you could find
Mhm.
something at 40 that just catapults you over the next 10 years that you never saw coming and changes your life. like it did with mine. I mean, I never saw that coming.
Yeah, totally. And I think also just understanding that, careers are not linear. I look back at my journey and my career path is so bizarre. It's like college dropout to laundry entrepreneur to bartender to
Yeah,
worked for like a moving company to stumbling into sales to getting a
right,
big job in the travel industry that I then gave up to be a BDR in tech because I wanted to get into
right,
tech. So went way back, and then that ended up catapulting me to leading teams, joining the right teams, and having a big acquisition, and ultimately VC. And now I'm a
right.
homeless backpacker podcast host, and I'm sure there'll be another another journey there at
Well,
some point.
yeah.
But
Well,
it's
that's why I end the book with, never giving up and keep moving forward, because that's all we can do. You just got to keep moving forward, not give up on yourself, because again, there's something going to come your way, and then 5 years you're going to look back and go, "Wow, I never thought I'd be sitting here doing this, and you know what? I'm damn good at it." And you never would have known it if you weren't open to it. And that's the biggest takeaway, I think, is just don't wear the blinders, being open. Don't be afraid to try something if it doesn't work, because it's the oldest saying: if you don't try, how are you ever going to know? You don't just sit there and keep looking for the same job when maybe the universe is telling you this ain't it. This ain't it.
yeah, yeah. I was as you're kind of talking, you've got this energy, this kind of like zest for life. And I'm just curious about sort of your practices that keep you present, that keep you healthy, that allow you to maintain this demeanor that you have, and this energy that you have that is a positive outlook on life in general. Like, are the things you do? I know your wife is incredibly important to you. Do you have
Right.
time that you carve out with her? Like just some of the
Yeah.
daily little tactics that sort of keep you appreciative and grateful for this
Well,
wonderful ride we're all on.
yes, I'm blessed to have an amazing wife, an amazing relationship, an amazing daughter, great friends. As you get older, I've lost people, and I'm very much into the idea that I want to see these people as much as possible and staying positive. That there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee I'm going to be here tomorrow. When I did my book event in LA, because the book takes place in Seattle, San Francisco, and LA, so I did book events at Barnes and Nobles at all three places. And the one in LA, there was 7 or 8 people from the Hard Rock that I work with who I hadn't seen for over 25
Wow.
years, and they were like, "I wouldn't miss it," and we just had a blast. But there were some other people who said, "Yeah, I couldn't make it. I'll see you next time." And I said, "Hey, how'd you get the guarantee?" They're like, "What?" I said, "How'd you get the guarantee that I'm going to be here next time,
Wow.
or you're going to be here?" I go, "This might have been the last time we would have seen each other." And I know a couple of them were taken back that they weren't thinking that way. They just thought, "Oh
Mhm.
yeah, whenever, if you come back a couple years from now, I'll see you." And I'm like, "I may not be here. You may not be here." So my thought is really about the present, is just keeping the present. I'm just, again, blessed everything that I've been able to accomplish. The medical journey I was on, being blessed with the surgery, and psychologically, I mean, it hasn't been easy when this book has come out, because when I was going through the seizures, when I mentioned the dark holes I went down, because I did the why me. It's like, what did I do? You start reflecting on your life. You go, what did I do? Why me? Why is this happening to me? And you start thinking that way. And then now when the book came out and I start meeting people in the epilepsy community that have had multiple surgeries and they still have seizures. And then I start thinking, they keep saying, wow, you're so lucky. You don't have, wow, you're so lucky. Then I start thinking, why me? why am I this lucky person that all these thousands of people have had surgery and it didn't work? And mine wasn't meant to work. It was just hopefully a lesson, but it eliminated them. And then you just start going, you know, why me? And it's been, hasn't been an easy journey since the book has come out because, you know, I've met so many people that are struggling and it's tough to hear their journeys. But when I hear from them how grateful they are for sharing my journey, then that's the piece that has really made me happy that again that my wife said, write this.
Hmm. Well, I'm very happy you did write that, and I love that line. How did you get the guarantee? For anyone when
I
they say see you
know.
next time, that's a good
And
line. I'm going to
I
take that
never
one.
thought that way. As you get older, you start visit like my baseball coach, who I mentioned in the book at the end, because he helped me early on with some of the early drafts. And I saw him in San Francisco, and then all of a sudden, a buddy said, "Hey, you know, Decker's got cancer." Boom, 6 months he was gone. And I almost didn't go to see him when they did a big they named the field, our high school field, after him. And I had all this stuff going, and I almost didn't go. And I was thinking, if I didn't go, I wouldn't have seen him. But after that happened and he was gone so quickly, I was like, you know, when I go to San Francisco, there's people I have to see who I grew up with. I've known since kindergarten. I go, I have to see you because I may never see you again. And it's, you know, part of it, some people go, oh, don't talk that way. I'm like, but it's the reality of it and that's even like you go to funerals and even at my dad's celebration of life, people were telling me how great he was. And some of them I called it on it that lived close enough. And I said, why didn't you ever tell him? Why are you telling me? I said, you could have went and seen him so many times, but you didn't. And life took over and you just assumed he was going to be around. And that's the kind of way I live life now is I tell people when I come to town, I need to see you. And you know, it's not like, oh, I only can meet you at 12 o'clock for coffee. And if you're not around, too bad. It's like, no, you tell me when you're available and I'll work around it.
Mm, it's a great mindset, and the one we could all adopt. I could adopt better for sure. You get so caught up in just your
I
own
know.
bullshit and the busyness of life, and everything seems so important to, and it's really not. It's really not at the end of the day. You realize how unimportant it is when you lose someone or you have
Right. And that's
these,
usually what it takes when
yeah,
someone sits back and
a wake up
realizes like,
call.
wow,
You know,
it's like, wow,
can
so and
you
so's
wake up
gone. Yeah.
before?
I
Yeah,
know. I
totally.
know.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people are just heads down, go, 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 and don't take time to see, you know, their close friends, you know, because
Hmm.
they're busy. You just need
Yeah.
to make time for, you know, the people that are special. You know, we all have our special people in our lives and you need to go spend time with those people.
Hmm. Hmm. I like it. Well, Michael, this has been super enjoyable. Thanks for sharing your story so openly
Yeah.
and honestly. And the last question I'll have, just, you know, hopefully this maybe reaches some folks that um, are dealing with their own maybe epilepsy or chronic illness. Is there any kind of resources or books that you want to highlight? You know, beyond, of course,
Besides my
yours.
book.
Yeah, of course, everyone's got to go check that one out, and we'll put it
um,
in the show notes. But um, anything that helped you as you were going through it?
no. And that's the thing when I reflect back, you know, there was the one consonant was the girlfriend.
Hmm.
I had somebody to
Hmm.
just be there for me. Um,
Hmm.
we, you know, if someone is going through something, hopefully, you know, they are surrounded by friends and family.
Hmm.
I wasn't reading books to make me feel better. I had the book, the girlfriend there telling me everything was going to be okay. So I had that positive reinforcement around me that, you know, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be
Hmm.
okay. And there's days when I was telling her, no, it ain't going to be okay. This is not, but, again, if I didn't have that, things would have been different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just surround yourself with loved ones and hopefully the loved ones are already surrounding you if you're going through something to be there for you.
Yeah. Is there support groups or anything for like epilepsy support
Yeah, there's
groups out
Epilepsy
there?
Foundation. Yeah, there's the Epilepsy
Yeah.
Foundation of America, which is the big national one. And then every city area like Seattle has their own branch, Northern California, LA, New England, they all have their own branch. That's what I was in San Francisco for the epilepsy walk. I think that was April. Last Saturday was Seattle, and then next Saturday was Portland. So I getting really involved in that is going to these things and just speaking to people and trying to share my story and then just telling them, keep moving forward, just things will get better and trying to stay positive.
All great pieces of advice. Thank you, Michael, and to all the listeners. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Do go check out Be There When I Return. There's so much in there, and it doesn't do it justice to try and squish it all in an hour. But there's lots of things we didn't cover. So check it out. And Michael, thanks again, man.
Man, thanks, buddy.